Hello, everyone. How has it been? I'm hoping it's been a splendid. Is this a fourth day of this event? It's just sad because we can't all be together. First one I attended was like 2014. But yeah, this will do. Thank you for the Scrum Alliance for making this happen. This is supposed to be a workshop. I think the most that we can do at the moment will be ready with uh, chatting, I guess. Um, I'll be asking some questions. I'll be asking for you to participate, but mainly through chat for the time being until maybe towards the end we can do breakouts. So what I'm not going to give you is not a clean, complete agile coaching psychology package that you can take away. Instead, think of this as a me celebrating two of my passions. Um, the beautiful science of psychology and a very powerful practice of agile coaching. It's like a really good complementary blend of bodies of work like Fish and Chips, Batman and Robin, Hall and Oates. I'm pushing it. Um, so at the very least, at the end of this workshop, my goal is for you to at least, I get to pick your curiosity with regard to maybe some of the theories and the research behind psychology is something that I could complement my practice with. Thank you for that introduction again, Sophie. So I've been, I have an engineering background, but since I've started uh, dabbling in agile coaching, particularly, I've been very interested in, I've been almost passionate, very, very passionate about psychology. But it's only recently that I had the chance to formally enroll in a graduate program with regard to psychology. I've been heavily experimenting with myself as well. That doesn't sound right. Let me rephrase. Things that I learn, I do on my own. One of them is the idea of mental toughness, and this is me trying to be tough. I think there's studies about translating the physical toughness to mental toughness. So far, so good. I'm becoming more confident with myself. Um, Something that I think I'll never believe myself if you told me 20 years ago that in my 40s I'll earn my blue belt or brown belt at some point in the martial arts. Yeah, that got me into doing that. So I highly recommend you doing new stuff. Okay, here's what we'll cover. It's a long one. I don't know if we will be able to cover 75 minutes, but here's how I see it coming along to give you a coherent flow. First, I'll talk about you as the coach. We look internally. Next will be about the context. You go into the organization, you go to the place of work, what's around there, and then you talk about. Then we'll talk about the people that you will be coaching, and hopefully towards the end we get to talk to each other and review. Sounds good? All right. So psychology and agile coaching. Psychology is a science. Like any science, it's going through rigorous scholarly processes, peer reviews, um, and psychology is just one of multiple sciences. Um, Agile coaching, on the other hand, is a practice. Pretty much, you do stuff in the wild. You experience success. You stick with it, um, and there's a lot of wisdom in doing that. So, two different approaches in acquiring knowledge. Um, and the thing is, the wisdom you gain from actually doing stuff, added to that, the wisdom that you get from rigorous research makes you a super coach, I guess. I tried. Um, so this will be psychology as a science have so many branches, and I try to prune this session so that it's coherent enough. I'll be just focusing on a few: social psychology, positive psychology. Maybe I'll hit a bit of cognitive psychology. We'll see. Um, and agile coaching as a practice is also quite large in terms of coverage. I won't talk about frameworks, transformation programs, organizational constructs, and all that. I'll be focusing on the human side, particularly developing the humans, working um, in an agile environment. Now let's start talking about you, and I want you to be ready with um, typing in the chat with this one. Please look at this picture. Now, in the first half second, what goes through your thoughts? And please type it in the chat. And I won't be able to read the chat, and I would need Stan's help.
My help.
Oh,
So
Stan.
shocked, puzzled,
Yeah.
curious, confused,
Yeah.
surprised, disturbed, scared, irritated, afraid.
That's, yep.
What did you just say?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot
Threatened,
of that. Yeah.
unexpected, angry,
Mm-hmm.
reaction to Clippers losing its nuggets.
You can.
What just happened? What the hell did we do? Shock and mad, surprised, angry, threatened. Which movie is this?
Okay. So in the first half second, there's a lot of information that we were able to gather. Like for me, I look at it, I'm like, okay, this girl is very cautious and wants me to step back. Or I can foresee that in the first half second I'm seeing this, I can foresee that she might push me away, right? So in the first half second. Now, another exercise. Again, the first half second, let me know what you think. All right, here we go. Okay, type what's going on in the chat now. Oh, I can't hear you.
Maths, well, purple, back to school, people say calculation, a number.
Yeah.
First answer, 480, 408.
Did someone reach for their cell phone and typed in a calculator and solved it? So a lot of people that I showed this to, they froze. They're like, oh, I know I can answer this, but I need to reach for pen and paper, or I need my phone or my laptop. I know I can solve this, but I stopped. Like, compared to this first half second, I had so much information flowing through my brain. I look at this, I like, okay. So what we encountered there is what we call two modes of thinking. There's a lot of body of work. There's a big body of work behind this. That is, we've experienced the first one, and I'm gonna be using Stanovich and West's verbiage with regard to this, because it could be called so many things, but this is the most neutral way of talking about them. System one is the first one, wherein we're very fast, instinctual, emotional. You don't really need to think about it. It's very low energy. It's there. System two, on the other hand, you put a lot of effort into it. You have to stop. You have to think. You have to solve problems. It's kind of like this, where system one is more like your brainless, not brainless, but I don't really need to think much, like zombies. So I look at some lines. I know it's a road. I have food in front of me. I just eat. I don't need to think about it. I walk. I don't even think about the steps that I take. And then there's system two. I'm faced with a problem. I look at it. I have to stop. It's so much effort. There's so much work. Is that clear? System one and system two. So now we've experienced that with the two examples that I have. I wanna confuse you a bit. I'm gonna make your system one and your system two conflict with each other. All right. So this is what's gonna happen. I'm going to show you 3 columns of words. But what I want you to do as fast as possible, and maybe in your mind or in your room or wherever, say it out loud if you want to. Each word, say the color of the font. All right? Are you ready? I'm going. 1, 2, 3. All right, who got it all? Oh, you're still doing it. All right, who got it all correctly and really fast?
You're torturing us, Mike.
So what happened there? So
You have conflicting stuff arriving, right?
yeah, so your system 1 and your system 2 overrided each other. Your system 1, so reading is system 1. You look at a set of letters, you can't stop yourself, you have to read it. System 2, on the other hand, you are analyzing the color and recalling, this kind of looks like yellow. But as you go through that, your system 1 is overriding your system 2. Did that make sense? That was the fun part. It's going to be more coaching now. So it's like riding a bike. When you started learning a bike, and I assume most of you can and have learned to ride a bike, the first time you were trying to ride a bike, it was an overwhelming experience with regard to information. And even probably physically, you're trying to coordinate your body, and it's quite hard at the start. And it's a lot of system 2 focus that you need to put into it, a lot of cognitive work. But at some point when you start learning it, it becomes system 1, becomes very automatic. Same way you're riding, you learn to drive manual, stick shift, it was very hard, backing was very hard. I know for some of you, parking, parallel parking is still difficult, but it becomes very automatic. It becomes system 1, you don't need to think about it. The same way that when you're driving to work every day, maybe the first time you drove, you need a lot of cognitive work. But after you've done it for a few months, it becomes very easy to the point that sometimes you don't even realize, how did I get to work? Now, you can use this as an agile coach or a coach by having a toolbox or chunks of sets of things that you can come in and just run with. So, for example, Scrum is a toolbox. You have put some cognitive work into it, and you go into a situation, you just run with it. Facilitation techniques, facilitation tools. You have a set of practices that you've already mastered, becomes very second nature. You go to a situation, you know how to apply it, you just do it. And it's really great if you have so much of this. You'll be able to work much, much more efficiently by knowing, by dedicating your cognitive power to the more important things, that is solving problems and all that. So you'll see a lot of playbooks, a lot of recipe and all that. That's a lot of thought that was given to it, and you should put some thought into a lot of that. But after a while, it you attempt to make it more automatic. So some research with regard to expertise and is novicity a word? So they were trying to compare chess experts and novices, and what they saw was that the difference with the experts and the novice is that experts saw patterns. They weren't looking at the specific pieces of the specific chess pieces when they play. They look at it, they recognize the patterns. The novices, they have to construct it every time. They look at every chess piece. So imagine you go into a coaching situation, the cognitive load that you have to deal with when you're analyzing all these stuff. So you have to come prepared. The thing about this, and something that is sobering from Miriam Bilalich, who was able to see the pattern matching that experts do, is that there are no shortcuts to expertise. You really have to have a variety of experience. You have to go through that, and then when you found the right things to do at specific time, make it very automatic for you. Become system one. So you save yourself your cognitive power for the more important bits. All right.
Mike, just one question
Mm-hmm.
from the chat. Can can it create biases too?
It
If
does.
you get into
It does, and let me go through that. I think I'll be able to answer that at some point within this talk. Hold on to that
great,
thought
thanks.
in your system too. So let me move on to a related topic. It's how you're showing up. Here's a story by David Foster Wallace. Obviously fictional. He's an author. Two young fish were swimming, and then there was this old fish who ran into them and asked, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the fish were like, they just swam. And then at some point, one of the fish stopped and asked, "What is water?" So this is very important, especially for coaches who are embedded and in it for the long term. System swallows people, sorry, environments swallow people. At some point, you don't know, you're not conscious of the things that are in the system anymore, the various influences, the rewards and punishment. Once you become part of the system, it's so hard to be neutral. When you're not neutral, you tend to be blind. You tend to not see specific things. So as a coach, your goal is to provide yourself the critical distance. Don't be attached to the specific situation. You have to make it more objective. Um, so I would like to reference Robert Keegan's work here with regard to subject-object relationship. That is, everyone is subjected to a specific thought pattern or feelings. If you're working in an environment, it's at some point, the environment will be like water. You won't notice the various influences anymore, and someone has to snap you out of it. So you're subjected to that. Your goal, and this is going to be difficult for a coach, is be able to make that thing that makes you subjected to thinking like that become an object, become something that you can observe, and that's quite difficult. Let me lean into that some more. So in or organization and relationship systems coaching, which is another body of work by practitioners, we have this thing called emotional field. Emotional field happens when, or it's an energy that it appears when one or two or more people get together. So for example, I look at this picture, the emotional field is that of indifference. They don't care, low energy. Um, for a coach, if you're part of this group, you may be sucked into the same energy. Now, your goal is to snap out of it. You have to be very intentional with regard to how you are going to deal with it. And you have that critical distance. So in ORSC, we call this meta skills. And meta skills is your way of presenting yourself in a specific situation. So for example, I'm working with this group. I know that the emotional field is that they're quite indifferent. I'm going to override my system one. I'm not going to flow into that, but I will be in a I will summon the meta skill of curiosity, or someone who would be inquisitive. So I go in there, I become not indifferent, but I become curious. So that's meta skills, and it's quite difficult. And you tend to also be self-conscious with regard to that, because I know that it's so hard to override my system one. I know I'm nervous, I know I'm scared or whatever in a specific situation, and you feel that some people would be able to detect that. But there's this thing called spotlight effect. What this says is that everyone is really, you tend to exaggerate what you think people notice about you. So because you are the center of your world, you know a lot of things that's going through your mind. If you're nervous, you know that you're nervous, but people don't see that, and you tend to exaggerate the feeling that people see you as nervous. So you can fake it pretty much. I guess there's no other way of saying that better, but they don't notice it. Just like right now, I'm nervous, but you don't see it. I'm in a meta skill of being energized. Another way to um, practice your meta skills or navigating um, the way you present yourself is being mindful. And mindfulness as a practice is really good in terms of increasing that um, subject-object relationship. So, for example, one of the practices is observing your breath. So the breath is controlled by your hindbrain, which is pretty much an automatic thing. So it's an autopilot. When you observe your breath, you are already observing an autopilot. You're already observing somewhat a system one. So when you start doing that, you get the skill of being able to observe yourself doing automatic things. It can translate to you observing your thought pattern. So like right now, am I thinking of the past? Am I thinking of the future? How's my posture right now? Am I being in a wakeful state? So that's pretty much and there's a whole slew of practices that I highly recommend you go through and explore. But I highly recommend mindfulness practices. It's so weird. I don't see the faces of people, but I'm just gonna go and move on. Let me tell you a story. So I've been a client of this specific bank. I'm making sure that I don't say the name of this bank. Online client. I see this. This is a regular occurrence. I see that. Very, very regular occurrence. So it's particularly to the people here who are in software development teams. What goes through your mind when you see those things? And please type away in the chat. So what's being...
404.
What's that?
404. That must be easy to fix. 404, 404.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Bad user experience, must be a fake bank. Are they going to lose my... have time to read. Sloppy, are they going to lose my money? What they're doing with my money, protesting and secured quality is not a priority. Why is this happening? Prod testing, production testing, consulting opportunity.
How about comments regarding the team?
Yeah, nobody put comments regarding the team.
Okay, that's good. So when I, like everyone else, you post this in social media, the comments that I got was like this. They're very unprofessional. Those developers are terrible. And things like that. And then, I mean, like the ratio is that 20 people were talking about how bad that team was that were creating that. And there were like 2 people who said, I will never work for that organization. It's so much pressure. There's so much, there's terrible environment that make people do terrible work. So 2 different ways of attributing a terrible situation. So let me go through the next bit of topic that we're going to go through is the context. When you go into an organization, you start looking for information, you look at where to attribute or where to find the causes of results like that. There's this thing called fundamental attribution error, wherein you observe people, and when something particularly negative happens, you attribute the result to the disposition of the people. It's them. So the same way that when I posted my picture of that, people pointed out, oh, it's a very unprofessional team. They're terrible developers in that group. But from the perspective of those who are inside doing the work, it's not about them. It's about the situation. We are undergoing so many changes. There's so many deadlines. We're overworked and stuff like that. So when you're a coach, you have to be aware that there'll be different interpretations of where to attribute the situation. Conversely, there's this thing called subserving bias, where when there's successes, like positive results, and you ask the people who did the work, it was me that caused it. It's my disposition. When potentially the people around that more observing, it's looking at the bigger picture, it's the situation. So when you enter an organization as a coach, you start looking for information. Watch out for the various ways things get attributed to. There's also the presence of authority, and and this can be quite deceiving. It does not to be a very strong authoritative person. It could be just a presence of sorts. Could be a memo. It could be a certain command, not command, a softer way of saying that. Something that you just have to do. What happens is that people start to absolve themselves of responsibility when that happens. And at the same time, from research from Stanley Milgram and other researchers, what they found out was that people tend to do things that they're not really going to do when left on their own because of authority. It's very obvious. But watch out for that in that environment. They can be very invisible, but they are there. Another thing is watch out for what I call the Ash paradigm, because Ash was the one who pioneered this research. Um, the rule of majority, and even the most rebellious people tend to conform. And you will see that because the majority is, it's not very, what do you call this, obvious sometimes. And people tend to behave in specific ways because they fear being isolated, or it's just something that will normally occur. So look for how the majority is influencing that particular environment. And for you as a coach, something that I got from Martek's book in psychology is critical thinking. Critical thinking is very basic. Um, First, what I'm trying to understand, what are you being asked to believe or accept? You're going to an organization, people tell you this is what it is, and then they give you some supporting assertions, evidence to assert what they said you have to accept. You look at the evidence, you look at other ways of interpreting the evidence, and I'll go talk about confirmation bias later, but go for ways of alternatively interpreting that evidence. And maybe there are other evidence that would help you evaluate those alternatives, and eventually look for the most reasonable conclusion. So your goal as a coach, again, critical distance, snap out of your system one thinking, try to look for the various perspectives. You have authority figures influencing the system, you have the majority influencing the system, you have attributions coming from different angles. So just be very mindful of that. So now let's talk about your coaches, the people that you're actually going to be interacting with. So this is called the us versus them phenomenon, wherein once you start identifying common things, for example, in a team, and I'm just going to be very software centric in my example here, software development team wherein there will be developers, there'll be testers, there'll be business analysts, and what have you. You will see that there will be some in groupings and out groupings. People will cluster together. And the problem with that is that when I start identifying this is a developer, I'm a developer, will be an in group, and they will not be explicit with that. It's just a phenomenon that will happen. You tend to see, if you're in the in group, you tend to see the other group as homogeneous. They all think the same. Like all testers will think the same. All managers will think the same. When in fact, every person will offer something different. So watch out for that. You start working a team, you look at the dynamics, you look at the out group, in group, break that. And one of the ways of breaking that is highlighting the difference, the whole person, like what they can bring, what their skills are, other than the specific role that they're playing in that group. Also works with departments. So there's that in group will now talk to that department. They all think the same way. So watch out for that. Now let me go to confirmation bias. So very similarly, I talk to people in a group. They will give me evidence that will just be towards their argument, while I go to the others and they'll look for information. And I will have my own bias. I'll go into an organization, I'm an agile coach, I will look for ways to make them agile. So I already have my bias. So again, I would go back to critical thinking. Am I going to scrum up this team? Maybe that's not the right thing to do with this team. So I'm already overriding my auto response. And that helps when I have multiple toolboxes. So I don't only have Scrum in my toolbox, I have other things in my toolbox. For all we know, I have a waterfall in my toolbox. I have to be open-minded with all these things. Okay, I've been talking a lot. Maybe I'll go and ask you again. And I'm just shamelessly stealing this from James Pavelski, who is an professor in University of Pennsylvania. So you are offered to be a superhero, but you have a choice between wearing the red cape or the green cape. The red cape, you are fighting against. Your superpower is fighting against hunger, violence, all the nasties. On the other hand, there's the green cape, wherein you're fighting for. I'm fighting for happiness. I'm fighting for harmony and all that good stuff. So in the chat, which cape will you wear? So what's going on?
Green, green, red, green.
Are we
Lots
split?
of green before. Depends. There are no capes.
The easy way out. I need a reversible cape, pretty much.
Should be blue, green and red on Tuesday, and green.
Okay, so it's the same way when we run retrospectives, right? Wherein what went well, what went wrong, and then we do action items. Most cases we actually address the what went wrong side of that. Don't really do any work on the what went well side. But it's like, you know, gardening. If all you do in your garden is to remove weed, it's still not a good, pretty garden. So removing weed is like the red cape, which is you're just really solving problems. You have to allot some time to plant and cultivate the plants. And it has nothing to do with solving problems. So that's the green cape. Those are two different things, two different types of work. So, for example, the absence of sickness doesn't mean you're healthy, right? It's just, I'm not sick. I still have to exercise. I still have to eat healthy and all that. It's different to solving problems. So I'm stealing this from my co-active coaching instructor. You have two things there. Do you want to work on the impediment in front of your coaching client? Or are you going to let them focus on the ambition that they want to do? There are two different types of work. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just that as humans, we tend to be more focused on problem solving rather than helping people flourish. We see organizations as a problem to solve, humans as problems to solve, rather than organizations as something that to grow, or a team that's something that I have to help grow. Different types of approaches. So this is what positive psychology was trying to solve, in a sense, because psychology previously was all about mental illness, and fixing that. Now, positive psychology was introduced by Dr. Seligman to address the other side of that. Um, like, how do I help humans flourish, and what are the techniques that I can do? And one of the ways of doing that is strength-based approaches. That is, I'm now focusing on what people are happy to achieve. So what are they value? And one such approach is appreciative inquiry by Dr. Cooper Ryder, wherein I start asking questions not about the problems that the organization or the team needs to solve, but more of when was the team so happy with the results of their work and what made them do that. And from there, I can see what they value. And like swimming, you would rather swim with the current, not against the current. So you pursue where they are headed when they are very happy. And appreciative inquiry is a technique. And again, I won't go into details, but something that you have to, I would recommend you look into. It's a 4-step cycle wherein when I engage a team, I do my discovery, which is what are the things that they were successful at, what were they proud of, and I start looking at the values that they are that is emerging out of that, and then using those, you start drafting what could be, and then designing steps into doing that, and then finally deploying it, or what was called destiny, but it's supposed to be deployed. Another thing that is in the domain of positive psychology is this concept called flow. So flow is something to do. So to give you an example of this phenomenon, in sports, we call this thing called in the zone. We have this thing called in the zone, wherein you're just unconscious. You're just really doing well. So if you are in a development team, you are just coding like time has stopped and you are just flowing. So that's flow. And that's something that makes people energized and really engaged. And this is something that we want our teams to be in. With the work of Michał Csikszentmihalyi, sorry, I just massacred his name. He has some 6 things that you would need for you to achieve that. First is there a clear set of goals, and there's immediate feedback whenever you do steps. And finally, what really puts this into gear is that with my skills, am I given the right challenges? So a good balance. If it's too challenging, I probably would tap out. If it's not too challenging, I'll get bored. So look for ways how to get that balance. Just being mindful, I've been like talking a lot. I'll just summarize. I know I just blasted you so much, and that's me pruning already with so much of that body of work. So a summary of the about you bit. So question is, are you being deliberate with how you show up? Do you have tools that will help you free up that cognitive load? Again, keeping yourself that critical distance so that you don't get biased by the environment. And are you also aware of your own biases, your how you attribute stuff? So you also have to have counter arguments against your own arguments. With the context, consider dispositional and situational factors, and people will come at you at different directions with this. Look at the invisible, particularly the invisible authority figures. It could be people, it could be a process, it could be it could appear in different ways. Be able to hear the voice of the minority just as much as you hear the voice of the majority, and then critically examine the evidence that's being presented to you. With regard to your coaches, they have personal biases. Just be aware of them. What are their strengths and values, and really go with that. Not just the problems that they need solved. And we tend to be more biased towards solving problems as people, as human beings. And then how can we get them into a state of flow? How are we with time, Sophie?
So you still have something like 30 minutes.
Wow.
If I take into account, if I
Seriously?
take into account the fact that we were late, let me check, but I think that's the case.
That's a long time.
Yeah, normally there's 16 minutes left, but we
Okay.
started like 10, 15 minutes late.
Okay.
So
That's awesome.
if you can finish earlier, I mean, it means
I was
we
I was hoping to, because I blasted you with all of my talking here and all that ideas. I want you to work together now moving forward for the next 10 minutes. So my goal is I'll give you a handout, um, virtual handout, and that's the link right there. I'll give you a link again after this. But I want you to go through all the theories and the topics that we went through. It's all in that handout, and choose one that you have experienced in the past or worked well for you, your favorite. Or if you can bring your own favorite theory or practice that you want to share with your group, please think about that. Um, how many people do we have? 120. If we divide it by 10, maybe?
So
Yeah.
10 people in each room.
Yeah,
You
10
might have a
people.
few leaving. So we
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do like 10, and it's all
10 people in each
voluntary.
room.
I mean, like, true to the
Okay.
spirit of coaching retreats, you have to, it's really awesome to connect with other people. Well, I highly recommend you take advantage of this. But so you will be grouped, and it's up to you whether to participate or not. Let's go for like six, six
Six
people. Or,
people in each room.
yeah. And then your meta skills, I want you to take a deep breath and smile so that you get to control the energy in that space. Use that meta skill of openness, curiosity, and excitement. Maybe it's been a long day for you. Maybe I bored you, or maybe I energized you. I would love you to please be more intentional with how you present yourself in that room. Now, quickly get to know each other, and then talk to your group. Take turns. Particularly, what are you proud of in your experience that connects with what we have discussed or what I've been talking about? Um, and then share with each other what you can take away. Is that good? So it's very simple. Very, very
So
simple.
I've shared the link. I don't know if people have seen it. The link you gave in that slide. Yeah, so
Yeah, so
you
this is the
have it
link. So that's
here.
the
It's
link.
also in the chat.
Yeah, so that's the
And
link.
I'm creating the rooms now.
Yeah,
Um,
let's go for 10, maybe 10 people each.
10 people in each room. All right.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll
Okay.
see you in 10 minutes. Go and discuss.
Yep.
I believe everyone's back. I was hoping to make the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes more about you sharing something. If anyone wants to share anything, hopefully positive. Can you please do so now? Unmute and just go and talk.
Yeah, hi, this is Sahindra. So we, in our breakout room, we were discussing appreciative inquiry. And one of the questions I had, we actually just got cut off, right? It was right at the end, is how does that sort of tie into, say, like a root cause analysis? So typically when we are asked to solve a wicked problem, we use a framework like the 5 whys and try and come up with the root causes and try and address that. So how does that sort of tie in with this appreciative
Two
inquiry
different.
approach?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Sandra. There are two different tools. It's the green cape and the red cape. 5 Whys is red cape. You're trying to solve a problem. With appreciative inquiry, you're not trying to solve a problem. You're trying to grow something. You're trying to cultivate something. They're two different things. So two
Okay,
different tools, different purposes. I wouldn't use
so
appreciative inquiry when I'm solving a problem.
sure. Okay, got it. Yep, thanks.
Anyone else?
So it's Joe. Thank you for an amazing presentation, and its diversity and its amazing thinking was reflected in our session because each of us went around and shared something different that stood out for them. So we each have something to go away with, and we learned from each other and saw those reflections. So thank you, Mike.
So awesome. Thank you. Can you share at least one of those that people might take away as well?
Okay, so one of the challenges was an ex-colleague of yours was detachment. How can I remain detached? Was one of them. And then the other one that came up twice, in fact, was being mindful and that self-care as a coach to enable you to work forward with your team or your client.
That is awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Last one.
Saravan, not sorry. You shared we used to perform cause-effect diagram.
So it was a pleasure.
You want to...
Sorry, Sophie, what were you saying?
No, I was saying that someone shared on the chat. They used to perform cause-effect diagram for their retrospective again. It is red one.
Yeah.
Just mentioning that.
Again, it's not wrong. It's just two different things. With that, this is a Filipino word, salamat, which means thank you. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next sessions. I heard they're awesome.